The air crackled with the electric energy of 1,000 light bulbs as the Ferris wheel spun lazily against the twilight sky. Laughter echoed through the carnival, a symphony of joy and innocence. But for me, the world had come to a standstill. The sweetness of cotton candy couldn't mask the bitter taste of betrayal, the searing pain of heartbreak. 2 years ago, I met him, my boyfriend, and a year later, we were a couple. He was everything I thought I wanted: charming, funny, and supportive. We were happy, we were in love, or at least I thought we were. There had been subtle signs, whispers of unease, that I'd tried to ignore. The sudden possessiveness over his phone, the way he'd tense up whenever I'd reach for it, the growing distance between us. These were the first cracks in the foundation of our relationship. But I had refused to see them, blinded by the promise of love. My best friend Sarah, a vibrant spirit who'd been by my side for 4 years, was celebrating her birthday. She wanted to do something different, something fun, something like a trip back to our childhood. So we were at the carnival, enjoying the rides, sharing laughter, creating memories. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, a day of pure joy. But then everything changed. Sarah had excused herself to the restroom, and our other friends were scattered across the carnival grounds. My boyfriend and I were waiting for cotton candy, and he told me he was going to get chips from a different stand. I didn't think twice. I got our cotton candy and decided to follow him, but he wasn't there. As I walked past a row of photo booths, my eyes were drawn to the small screen outside one. It showed a couple in mid-embrace, their faces obscured by the blur of the photo. It took me a second to process, but then I saw them. My boyfriend, his arms wrapped around Sarah, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. My world stopped spinning. That moment, the Ferris wheel, the lights, the laughter, everything faded away. I was left with a searing pain that ripped through my chest, a pain that I had never felt before. The Ferris wheel kept spinning, but my heart had stopped. The first crack in our foundation was subtle, almost imperceptible. It started with a phone. It was a Saturday night, and we were on the couch, watching a movie. He was scrolling through something on his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. I reached for my phone to check a text, and his hand instinctively shot out, grabbing it. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked, a hint of amusement in my voice. He looked up, startled, his eyes wide. "Oh, sorry, babe," he said. I don't know, it's just weird when someone else is using my phone. I shrugged it off. "It's just a phone, honey, relax." But even as I said it, a flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Why was he so anxious about me using his phone? We'd been together for a year, and this was the first time I'd noticed him acting this way. Over the next few weeks, the subtle changes continued. He'd become more possessive of his belongings, keeping his phone locked, fidgeting when I was in the same room as his laptop, and even getting visibly tense when I tried to wear his favorite sweatshirt. I tried to talk to him about it, but he'd brush me off. He'd say, "It's just a feeling, babe. No big deal." But it was a big deal. These were not the actions of a man who was completely devoted to his girlfriend. These were the actions of someone who was hiding something. The doubts in my mind began to grow. I started to look for clues, for signs that something was wrong. I began to analyze every text message, every phone call, every conversation. I looked for hidden messages, for signs of an affair, for anything that could prove my suspicions. The worst part was, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He was still charming, still funny, still seemed to love me, but there was something different, a change in his energy, a shift in his demeanor. Our relationship, once a picture of health and mutual respect, began to show faint cracks. And the more I looked, the more cracks I saw. One evening, I was scrolling through his Instagram feed, and I saw a picture of a girl I didn't recognize. She was beautiful, with long blonde hair and a bright smile. "Who's this?" I asked, pointing to the picture. He looked over my shoulder, a flicker of panic crossing his face. "Oh, that's just a friend, babe," he said, quickly closing the app. "Don't worry about it." His reaction only fueled my suspicions. Why was he so quick to shut it down? Why was he so defensive? I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning. The cracks in our foundation were starting to widen, and soon they would become gaping fissures. Sarah's birthday was approaching, and she wanted to do something different, something that would take us back to our carefree childhood days. Her solution? A carnival. The thought of cotton candy, bright lights, and laughter filled me with a sense of excitement. Perhaps, I thought, this could be the perfect way to mend the cracks in our relationship. The day arrived, and Sarah's invitation was extended to our core group of friends. 6 of us, all with a shared history, all ready for a day of fun and celebration. The carnival was a dazzling sensory overload, a whirlwind of color, noise, and the sweet scent of popcorn and cotton candy. We laughed, shouted, and reveled in the simple pleasures of the rides. It was a welcome distraction from the storm brewing inside me. But as the hours passed, a familiar feeling of unease began to creep in. Sarah excused herself to the restroom, and our other friends scattered for snacks or one last ride. Suddenly, it was just my boyfriend and me, standing by a cotton candy stall. "I'm going to grab some chips from that stall over there," he said, pointing to a stand across the way. "Be right back." "Okay, honey," I said, trying to project an air of normalcy. "I'll be here." He didn't look at me as he turned and walked away. I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. My boyfriend's behavior had changed so much in recent weeks, and his sudden departure, his refusal to meet my gaze, only fueled my suspicions. I stood there, watching him walk away, trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. He was just getting some chips, right? It was almost as if he was trying to avoid my gaze. His usual charm, his playful banter were gone. In their place was a guarded silence. A few minutes passed, and I went to get our cotton candy. I took a couple of bites, but the sweetness tasted like ash in my mouth. "I'm going to find him," I muttered to myself, a sense of dread creeping into my heart. Maybe he's lost. I started walking toward the chip stall, my mind racing, trying to convince myself that everything would be okay. As I passed the row of photo booths, I couldn't help but glance at the small screens outside. They showed couples in mid-pose, their faces obscured by the blur of the pictures. It was just a fleeting glance, but then I saw it, a familiar silhouette. Sarah, her blonde hair gleaming in the light, her arm wrapped around my boyfriend. Their faces were blurred, but their body language spoke volumes. It took a few seconds to process. My heart skipped a beat, my breath caught in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like a scene from a movie, one of those moments where the world around you freezes and all you can see is the image in front of you. My boyfriend and my best friend locked in an intimate embrace. The air around me seemed to crackle with a strange energy, a mixture of disbelief, anger, and pain. I was paralyzed. I felt a sudden wave of nausea, like a physical manifestation of the betrayal that was unfolding before me. My eyes were fixed on the photo booth, unable to tear away. They were kissing, their bodies swaying, their hands entangled. It felt like an eternity. And then I woke up. I wasn't dreaming. This was real. My boyfriend and my best friend, the two people I trusted most in the world, were betraying me in the most public, most humiliating way imaginable. I took a step back, my legs weak, my mind reeling. The tears came silently, an internal storm of emotions brewing within me. But resolve quickly followed. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I pulled out my phone and started recording them, tears streaming down my face. I knew I needed proof. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a confrontation. Not yet. I needed time to process this, to find a way to expose their betrayal. I turned and walked away, my steps hesitant, my heart heavy. I headed towards the bathroom, seeking a moment of privacy, a chance to gather myself and process the pain that was consuming me. I sat there, sobbing uncontrollably, feeling like a fool, like a naive, gullible idiot. The sound of the carnival, the laughter, the music, it all seemed to fade away. The joy of the day was replaced by a crushing sense of loneliness and despair. My boyfriend, my best friend, had turned against me. They had betrayed my trust, my love, my friendship. What was I going to do? The bathroom walls seemed to close in on me, amplifying the deafening silence of my own heartbreak. My reflection in the cracked mirror was a stranger, my eyes red and swollen, my face pale with shock. I couldn't believe what I had witnessed. How could he, the man I loved, the man who'd whispered sweet nothings into my ear, the man who'd promised me a lifetime of happiness, betray me like this? And with Sarah of all people, my best friend, my confidant, the person I had shared every secret with. It felt like a punch to the gut, a betrayal so deep, so devastating, that it left me reeling. I had tried to brush aside the subtle changes in his behavior in recent weeks, attributing them to stress, to a busy work schedule, to anything but the truth. Now, the truth was staring me in the face, a harsh, undeniable reality. The sound of running water, the whispers of other people using the restroom, they all seemed distant, muffled, like I was trapped in a bubble of my own despair. I stayed in that bathroom, sobbing silently, trying to gather my thoughts, to make sense of the chaos swirling inside me. They made me feel so foolish, so naive. How could I have been so blind? I knew I couldn't just stay here. I had to get out, to see what they were doing, to face them, to confront them. Taking a deep breath, I wiped away my tears and tried to compose myself. I couldn't let them see me like this. They had already won half the battle by making me feel so vulnerable. I went back to the food stalls, my steps hesitant, my heart heavy. As I walked through the crowds, I noticed my boyfriend standing at a chip stall. He was smiling, laughing with a group of friends, and for a moment it felt like nothing had changed. But then I saw her, Sarah, standing just a few feet away, watching him. Her eyes met mine, and a flicker of guilt crossed her face. I turned away, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't look at them. I couldn't face them. They had broken me. My boyfriend came back, his face lit up with a smile. "Sorry, babe," he said. There was a long line. "It's okay," I said, forcing a smile. I didn't mind waiting. The words felt hollow. My insides were twisted, my stomach churning. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him exactly what I thought, to expose their betrayal. But I couldn't. I was too afraid. I tried to act normal, to pretend that nothing had happened. But the charade was painful. Every time he looked at me, every time he touched me, I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. We joined our friends and we ate our dinner. The laughter, the chatter, the joy of the evening, it all felt distant, surreal. I couldn't focus on anything but the betrayal, the hurt, the pain. I hated pretending that everything was okay. I hated the way they had made me feel, like a fool, like a naive child. After dinner, everyone went home. I went to bed, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had seen, what I had witnessed. My heart ached with pain, a pain that seemed to echo through my entire body. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. They had betrayed my trust. They had hurt me deeply, but I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I had to make them pay. Sleep was a distant memory. My mind replayed the scene from the photo booth, the image of their intertwined bodies, their lips locked in a kiss, burned into my brain. Each breath felt like a shard of glass piercing my lungs. Each heartbeat a reminder of the betrayal I had witnessed. The carnival, a place of joy and laughter, had become a monument to pain. It was supposed to be Sarah's birthday celebration, a day filled with happiness and memories. Instead, it had become a crucible, a catalyst that had shattered my world. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a sense of helplessness wash over me. My heart ached with a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I wanted to scream, to shout, to make them pay for what they had done. But I knew I couldn't. Not yet. I had to be smarter than that. I had to find a way to expose them, to show everyone what they had done, to make them accountable for their actions. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the messages I had sent and received throughout the day. He had been distant, unresponsive, avoiding my gaze. His usual charm, his playful banter, were gone, replaced by a guarded silence. But I had brushed it aside, telling myself that it was just a bad day, that he was stressed. Now I saw the truth. It was all a facade. He had been planning this. He had been cheating on me for weeks, maybe even months. I felt a surge of anger. He had lied to me. He had betrayed my trust. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, to smash it against the wall, to vent my rage. But I couldn't. I needed to stay calm. I needed to think. My thoughts raced. I had to find a way to expose him. But how? I scrolled through his Instagram, looking for any sign of Sarah. There was nothing. No pictures, no comments, no evidence. He was good at hiding his tracks. I checked his Facebook and then his Twitter, but found nothing. He had been careful. But then I saw it. A shared photo from a few weeks ago, a picture of them together at a pub, their arms around each other, their faces close. There was a slight smile on their faces, an undeniable chemistry that I had never noticed before. I zoomed in on the photo, scrutinizing their expressions, their body language. I could feel a wave of nausea wash over me. It was like a physical manifestation of the betrayal I had witnessed. I was so angry, so hurt. He was so good at pretending, so good at hiding his true feelings. He had been living a double life. How could he do this to me? I knew I had to do something. I had to prove what they had done. I had to show everyone the truth. But I needed more evidence. I needed to know for sure. The next day, I sat at my computer, scrolling through our text messages, our Instagram photos, our Facebook posts. I looked for any hint, any clue, anything that could prove what I suspected. I had to know for sure. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my heart. I moved through my daily routine in a daze, each interaction a painful reminder of the shattered trust and the shattered pieces of my heart. I couldn't bear to look at my phone. The memories of that night, the video of my boyfriend and Sarah, were burned into my memory, a haunting reminder of their betrayal. I couldn't bear to see him. His presence was a constant reminder of the pain I had endured. The thought of his touch, his voice, his laughter was unbearable. I tried to distract myself. I went out with friends. I threw myself into my work, but it was no use. I couldn't escape the overwhelming sadness, the feeling of betrayal, the sense of being so incredibly foolish. I tried to talk to my other friends, to confide in them, to find solace in their support. But even those conversations felt hollow. I was ashamed, embarrassed. How could I have been so blind? I found myself increasingly withdrawn. I started avoiding social gatherings. I preferred to stay home alone, lost in my thoughts, consumed by the pain and anger. He called me. He texted me. He begged me to meet him, to talk. But I refused. I had seen the truth. There was nothing left to say. The only thing I could think about was how to expose them. How could I make them pay for what they had done? I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just confront them. Not yet. I needed more evidence. I needed a plan. And so I began to gather information. I started going through his phone, looking for anything that could help me prove my suspicions. He'd left it unlocked, and I felt a surge of anger as I saw his messages with Sarah. They were filled with sweet nothings, secret rendezvous, and intimate details. Each message I read added fuel to the fire of my anger. I wanted to scream, to shout, to tell him exactly what I thought. But I couldn't. I needed to stay calm, to collect evidence. I found an old, forgotten photo album filled with pictures of them together, pictures they'd hidden away. I saw them laughing, dancing, holding hands. It was a twisted reminder of their secret relationship, a secret they had kept from me for so long. The evidence was mounting, but I wasn't satisfied. I knew I needed more. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. I spent days, nights, and weeks poring over his phone, his emails, his social media accounts, looking for anything that could expose them. The charade continued. He'd call me, text me, act like everything was fine. He'd even try to visit me, but I'd refuse to see him. I was done. I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to hear his apologies. He had broken my trust. I wasn't going to forgive him, not anytime soon. But I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. I needed to know for sure, to have undeniable proof, and I was determined to get it. The pain of betrayal gnawed at me, but it fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I was going to make them pay. The storm inside me was reaching a crescendo. I had spent weeks gathering evidence, building a case, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. My boyfriend Darren had become a ghost in my life, his calls and texts going unanswered. His attempts to contact me met with silence. The apartment we shared, once a haven of love and laughter, now felt like a prison, a constant reminder of the betrayal I had endured. Every corner, every room, every piece of furniture held memories, memories that were now tainted with pain. I had to get out of there. I needed a change of scenery, a fresh start. So I packed my bags and moved to a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was a place where I could start to rebuild my life. I knew I had to confront Darren, to expose his betrayal, to make him pay for what he had done. But I wasn't going to do it in person. Not yet. I had to make sure it was done right, that everyone knew the truth. And I had to do it in a way that would leave no room for doubt, no room for denial. I called a meeting. I invited my close friends, the ones who had stood by me, the ones who had seen the pain in my eyes, the ones who had believed my story. I gathered them at a local coffee shop, a place where we had often met, a place that now felt like a battlefield. When they arrived, I could see the concern in their faces. They knew something was wrong. They had seen the changes in me, the sadness, the anger, the brokenness. I handed them each a copy of the video I had taken. "I need you to watch this," I said, my voice trembling. "I need you to see what he did." They watched in silence, their faces turning pale with shock and disbelief. "I knew it," one friend whispered, her eyes wide. Another friend shook his head, his face contorted in anger. The nerve of him. As they watched the video, a wave of anger washed over me. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them how much he had hurt me, how much she had hurt me, but I just stood there, my eyes fixed on the faces of my friends, watching their reactions. They had seen it. They had seen the truth. After they finished watching the video, they looked at me, their faces filled with sadness and understanding. "I'm so sorry," one of my friends said. "He never should have done this to you." "I can't believe he did this to you," another friend said. "He's a jerk." "I'm here for you," my friend said, reaching out and taking my hand. I felt a surge of relief, a sense of validation. I was not alone. My friends believed me, but the fight wasn't over. I had to expose them. I had to make sure that everyone knew the truth. So, I did the hardest thing I'd ever done. I posted the video online. It was a public declaration of betrayal, a statement that was painful but necessary. I sent the video to my boyfriend's family, to Sarah's family, and to everyone who had been involved in this twisted drama. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I had to do it. The video went viral. It spread like wildfire across social media, reaching every corner of our town, every corner of our lives. Suddenly, I was no longer the heartbroken victim. I was a public figure, a symbol of betrayal. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, calls, and emails. Friends reached out, offering their support, their sympathy, their anger. My boyfriend's family contacted me, apologizing for their son's actions, expressing their shock and disappointment. Sarah's family, who had always been close to me, were heartbroken. They were devastated by her betrayal. They reached out to me, expressing their regret and offering their support. My friends, the ones who had witnessed the video, were furious. They rallied around me, offering their support, their protection, their love. They blocked Darren and Sarah on social media, and they made it clear that they would not tolerate their behavior. Darren's response was pathetic. He tried to call me, to text me, to plead for forgiveness, but I refused to answer. I had seen the truth. I had heard his apologies before. I blocked him on all social media platforms, his phone number, his email address. I wanted nothing to do with him. Sarah's response was even more pathetic. She tried to explain herself, to make excuses, to shift the blame. She claimed that she had been confused, that she was drunk, that she had made a mistake, but I wasn't buying it. I knew she had been involved in this from the start. I also blocked her on all social media platforms, her phone number, her email address. I wanted nothing to do with her either. I was surrounded by love, by support, by understanding, but I was still hurting. The betrayal was still raw, the pain still fresh. I felt like I had lost everything: my love, my best friend, my trust in the world. I was exhausted. I was broken. I was also angry. I had to make sure that they paid for what they had done. I had to make sure that they would never do this to anyone again. But what could I do? I was alone in my apartment, trying to cope with the fallout of their betrayal. My life had been turned upside down, and I didn't know how I was going to put it back together. But then something unexpected happened, something that gave me a glimmer of hope. Darren and Sarah, in their desperation to mend fences, had taken the worst possible approach. They had tried to win back my favor by getting my parents on their side. They had told my parents a carefully crafted story about how their relationship had been a mistake, how they were both deeply sorry, and how they wanted to make things right with me. My parents, who had always been supportive of my boyfriend, had always cherished Sarah as a daughter, believed them. They reached out to me, pleading with me to reconsider my decision. They told me that Darren and Sarah had changed, that they were truly sorry, that they wanted to mend their relationship with me. They were wrong, I knew that, but they didn't. And that was the problem. My parents had always been a source of strength, a source of stability, a source of love. Now they were the ones who were hurting me the most. I was lost, confused, and utterly heartbroken. But I knew one thing for sure. I was not going to let them win. The phone call from my mother pierced through my fragile sense of peace. Her voice, usually a source of comfort, now carried a weight of disappointment. "Honey," she said, her tone a mixture of concern and pleading, "Darren and Sarah are so sorry. They're heartbroken. They want to make things right with you. Can you please consider talking to them? They really care about you." My heart sank. How could she not see? How could she believe their fabricated apologies? Had she not witnessed the pain they had inflicted upon me? Was she truly willing to forgive them, to sweep their betrayal under the rug? The cracks in my family's foundation, once hidden beneath a veneer of love and support, were now gaping fissures. The weight of betrayal, the pain of being abandoned by those I loved the most, became almost unbearable. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of hurt, and the only life raft in sight was sinking beneath me. I tried to reason with my mother. I tried to explain the depth of the betrayal, the pain, the anger. I tried to show her the evidence, the video, the proof that their apologies were empty words, but she wouldn't listen. She had always had a soft spot for Sarah, a mother's instinct to nurture and protect. She couldn't bear to see her in pain, even if it meant ignoring the pain she had caused me. My father, who had always been a man of few words, remained silent. He never took sides. But his silence was deafening. It spoke volumes about the lack of support, the lack of understanding, the lack of love. For the first time, I felt truly alone. The foundation of my world, my family, my support system had crumbled. I realized that I had to make a choice. I could try to mend the broken pieces of my family, but it would mean ignoring the pain I had endured, forgiving the unforgivable. Or I could take a step back, protect myself, and begin to build a new life, a life without them. The decision was agonizing. I loved my parents. They had always been there for me. They had always been my rock. But they were not choosing me. They were choosing to believe the lies of the people who had betrayed me. The thought of losing them, of losing my family, was unbearable. But I knew I couldn't stay in this toxic environment. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't let them gaslight me into believing that I was the one in the wrong. My voice, trembling with pain and anger, broke the silence. "I can't be around you both anymore," I said. "You're choosing to believe them over me. You're hurting me more than they ever could." The words hung heavy in the air, a chasm of hurt and betrayal widening between us. Their faces were filled with shock, with sadness, with a kind of disbelief that stung even more than the betrayal itself. I hung up the phone, the air thick with sorrow. I felt a wave of loneliness crash over me, a feeling that had never visited me before. The walls of my new apartment, once a symbol of newfound freedom, now felt like a cage, trapping me in a prison of isolation and despair. I was alone, but I was free. The world felt like it was spinning, but not in a fun, carnival way. It was a dizzying, disorienting spin, a nauseating cycle of hurt, anger, and confusion. My heart, once filled with love and hope, was now a heavy weight, pulling me down into a dark abyss. I spent days in a haze of emotional exhaustion, bouncing between bouts of furious anger and waves of crushing sadness. The betrayal felt like a betrayal of everything I believed in: trust, loyalty, friendship, love. My parents' reaction cut deep. Their immediate belief in Darren and Sarah, their willingness to dismiss my pain, felt like a betrayal on another level. It had been their love and support that had always kept me grounded, their arms that I had always run to for comfort. But now, those arms had turned into a cage, holding me prisoner to their own misguided understanding. The apartment I had moved to, a beacon of fresh beginnings, became a haven for my tears. Every corner held memories of Darren. Each whisper of wind outside my window seemed to carry the ghost of Sarah. I was surrounded by reminders of my loss, of their betrayal, of the shattered pieces of my life. I desperately sought solace in my friends, in their support, in their understanding. They gathered around me, offering their love, their sympathy, their anger towards Darren and Sarah. But the pain didn't dissipate. It remained a constant ache, a knot in my stomach that tightened with every passing moment. I tried to distract myself, to fill the void left by their betrayal with new experiences, new friendships, new goals. I threw myself into work, trying to find purpose in my career. I reached out to other friends, rekindled old connections, and tried to create new ones. But the betrayal, the hurt, the anger, it was always there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting to resurface. I was learning to live with the pain, to navigate the storm of emotions, but I still felt lost and broken. The world felt different, as if the colors had faded, the sounds had become muffled, and the joy had disappeared. I had to find a way to heal. I had to find a way to move on. One day, as I was driving home from work, a song came on the radio. It was a song I had loved when I first met Darren, a song that had always reminded me of the early days of our relationship. But now, as the familiar melody filled the car, it brought back a torrent of memories, not of love and joy, but of betrayal and pain. I pulled over to the side of the road, unable to control the tears that streamed down my face. I couldn't listen to that song anymore. I couldn't even look at the photo of Darren that had once been on my dashboard. I had to let go, but letting go was harder than I thought it would be. I needed help. I needed to talk to someone. I needed to find a way to heal. The realization hit me like a wave of cold water. I couldn't keep going like this. I was drowning in a sea of pain, and I needed a lifeline. I needed to heal. So, I took a deep breath and reached out to a therapist. It was a difficult decision. I had never been one to confide in strangers, to share my deepest fears and anxieties with someone I barely knew. But the pain was too much. I couldn't bear it anymore. I made the appointment, and as I sat in the waiting room, a wave of nervousness washed over me. But I had to do this. I had to try. The therapist, a kind, compassionate woman, listened to my story with a patient ear. She didn't judge me. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened. She helped me understand the complexities of betrayal, the impact it had on my self-esteem, and the importance of self-care. She reminded me that it wasn't my fault, that I hadn't done anything wrong, that I had nothing to be ashamed of. She also reminded me that I wasn't alone, that many people had been through similar experiences, that I was strong, that I could heal, that I could move on. She encouraged me to write about my feelings, to express myself creatively, to find ways to channel my pain into something positive. I started writing in a journal, pouring my heart onto the pages, letting the words flow freely, without judgment. I wrote about the betrayal, about the pain, about the anger, but I also wrote about the love, the hope, and the resilience that still resided within me. I began to paint again, a hobby I had abandoned years ago. I poured my emotions into vibrant colors, creating a world where pain and beauty intertwined, where darkness and light danced together. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had always been there for me, the ones who understood me, the ones who reminded me of who I was. I started to spend more time outdoors, walking, hiking, running, allowing nature to heal my broken spirit. I learned to savor the small joys in life, the simple pleasures, the moments of peace. My journey to healing was slow and painful. There were days when I felt like I was back to square one, days when the pain was so intense that I felt like I was drowning. But I kept going, I kept fighting, I kept believing in myself. With each passing day, I felt a little stronger, a little more resilient, a little more hopeful. I started to see the world in new light. I started to appreciate the beauty in the world around me. I started to believe in myself again. I knew I was going to be okay. The road to healing was a winding one, filled with unexpected turns and detours. There were days when I felt like I was making progress, like the fog of betrayal was lifting, and then there were days when the pain came crashing back, as raw and overwhelming as the day it began. But with each passing day, with each tear I cried, with each moment of self-compassion, I started to feel a shift within myself. A quiet strength began to rise within me, a strength born out of the ashes of betrayal. I realized that the pain I had endured was not a weakness, but a testament to my capacity for love and vulnerability. The betrayal I had experienced, while devastating, had also been a catalyst for growth. I started to see the situation from a different perspective. I saw that I had been naive, that I had allowed my trust to be taken advantage of. But I also saw that I was strong, that I had survived, that I had learned a valuable lesson. I began to recognize my own worth, my own value, and I started to demand more from myself and from the people around me. I no longer accepted mediocrity. I no longer tolerated disrespect. I no longer allowed myself to be taken advantage of. I began to make choices that reflected my newfound strength. I started saying no to things that didn't serve me. I started setting boundaries with the people around me. I started to demand more from myself. My friends rallied around me, offering their unwavering support, their love, and their friendship. They helped me rebuild my life, one piece at a time. I started to see the world in a new light, a world where I was not a victim, but a survivor, a world where I was not broken, but empowered. I started to make new plans, to set new goals, to dream new dreams. I was no longer defined by the betrayal I had endured. I was defined by my resilience, my strength, and my determination to live a life filled with love, joy, and meaning. I knew I would never forget the pain. I knew I would always carry the scars of betrayal, but I was no longer defined by them. I was ready to move on. The journey to healing wasn't a straight line. It was a winding path, filled with unexpected turns and detours. Some days the pain felt fresh, the anger hot, and the betrayal almost unbearable. But as time passed and I continued to work on myself, I began to notice a shift, a subtle but significant change in my perspective. It wasn't about forgetting what happened or condoning their actions. It wasn't about letting them back into my life or trying to rebuild what was broken. It was about releasing the weight of resentment and anger that I had been carrying. It was about finding a way to move forward, to live a life free from the shackles of the past. The first step was acknowledging my own role. I had been blind to the signs, blinded by love, blinded by trust. I had to accept that I had made mistakes, that I had allowed myself to be taken advantage of. The second step was recognizing that their actions were not about me. They were about their own insecurities, their own flaws, their own need for validation. Their choices were a reflection of who they were, not who I was. The third step was recognizing that I was not defined by their actions. I was strong, I was resilient, I was worthy of love and happiness. And then one day, as I was sitting in my therapist's office, I realized something profound. I didn't need to forgive them. I didn't need to let them back into my life. But I did need to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself for believing their lies, for trusting them when I shouldn't have, for letting myself be hurt. Forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about me. It was about releasing the pain, the anger, the resentment. It was about letting go. I didn't have to forget what happened. I didn't have to pretend it didn't hurt. But I could choose to release the hold it had on me, the power it had over my life. I realized that forgiving myself wasn't about them. It wasn't about condoning their actions. It was about choosing to move on, to find peace within myself, to free myself from the shackles of the past. It was about reclaiming my own power. I walked out of the therapist's office that day, feeling lighter, stronger, more free. The journey to healing had been long and arduous, but I had finally reached a turning point. I had found forgiveness. And with forgiveness came a new sense of peace, a new sense of purpose, a new sense of hope. The world felt different now. The colors were brighter, the sounds more vibrant, the air lighter. It was as if a weight had been lifted, a heavy burden released. I had journeyed through a dark valley, a valley of betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, but I had emerged on the other side, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, about loyalty, about love. I had learned to trust my gut, to set boundaries, and to prioritize my own happiness. I had also learned the power of forgiveness, the power of letting go, the power of choosing to move on. I still had scars, scars that reminded me of the pain I had endured. But those scars were not a weakness. They were a testament to my strength, to my ability to survive. My heart, once shattered, was slowly beginning to heal. I started to think about the future, about what I wanted for myself. I had dreams, I had aspirations, I had a life to live. I made a conscious decision to move forward, to focus on my own happiness, to build a life that was filled with love, joy, and meaning. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had stood by me, the ones who had shown me unwavering support and compassion. I started to make new friends, people who were kind, genuine, and respectful. I threw myself into my work, finding purpose and satisfaction in my career. I started new hobbies, rekindled old passions, and discovered new ones. I traveled, embraced new cultures, experienced new adventures. I found a new love, a love that was based on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. A love that was built on a foundation of shared values, shared dreams, and shared passions. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments when the ghosts of the past threatened to pull me back. But I kept moving forward. I kept believing in myself. I was determined to create a life that was filled with happiness and joy. And I was determined to never let anyone take advantage of my trust again. It took time, it took effort, it took a lot of healing, but I did it. I moved on. The carnival lights twinkled in the distance, a kaleidoscope of color against the evening sky. A year had passed since my world had shattered, since my heart had been broken. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the city lights shimmer below. The air was crisp, the silence peaceful. I couldn't believe how far I had come. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and loss. I had felt alone, broken, and lost. But I had found strength. I had found healing. I had found myself. The carnival, the place where my world had cracked, now felt like a distant memory, a painful chapter that had closed. I looked at the city lights, a twinkling tapestry of hope and possibility. I wasn't the same person I was a year ago. I was stronger. I was wiser. I was more resilient. I had learned that love wasn't always enough. That trust was a fragile thing, easily broken. That forgiveness was a gift you gave to yourself, not to the people who had hurt you. I had also learned that life was a journey filled with twists and turns, with highs and lows, with triumphs and defeats. But the most important thing I had learned was that I was strong, that I could survive anything, that I could heal, that I could move on. The carnival lights continued to twinkle, a reminder of the past, a reminder of how far I had come. I smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile, a smile that reflected the peace and joy I had finally found. The carnival had been a place of heartbreak, but it had also been the place where I discovered my strength. The carnival was over, but my story had just begun, and it was going to be a beautiful story. I stepped back from the balcony, feeling a surge of hope and excitement. The future was bright. I was ready to embrace it. I was ready to love again. But this time, I was going to love myself first. Epilogue, the carnival crush, a year later. The Ferris wheel stood silent, a metal skeleton against the winter sky. The carnival lights were gone, replaced by the starkness of a closed-down amusement park. But for me, it still held a powerful presence. A year had passed since I had stood here, my heart shattered, my world turned upside down. A year had passed since I had witnessed the betrayal of my boyfriend Darren and my best friend Sarah in the most public, most humiliating way imaginable. A year had passed since I had walked away from a life I thought I knew, a life I had believed in. And a year had passed since I had started to rebuild my life, to find my own strength, to heal my broken heart. I drove past the carnival, its stillness a stark contrast to the bustling, vibrant world I had built for myself. The pain was still there, but it was a dull ache, a faint echo of the consuming storm that had once engulfed me. My life had transformed. I had moved to a new city, embraced a new career, and forged new connections. I had found a love that was built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. A love that filled me with joy, a love that made me feel safe, a love that made me feel whole. I hadn't spoken to Darren or Sarah in months. Their names, once etched in my heart with love and trust, now felt like faded memories. Their betrayal had been a catalyst, a wake-up call. It had forced me to confront my vulnerabilities, to acknowledge my own strength, and to take control of my life. I had forgiven them, not for their sake, but for my own. I had released the weight of resentment and anger, choosing to move forward with my life. And I had learned to love myself. I had learned to trust my intuition, to set boundaries, and to prioritize my own happiness. The carnival was a reminder of my journey, of the pain I had endured, but also of the resilience I had discovered. It was a reminder that even in the face of betrayal, even in the depths of despair, there is always hope. I drove on, the city lights shimmering ahead, a kaleidoscope of promise and opportunity. The world was a new place, a world where I was in control. The carnival might have been the place where my world cracked, but it was also the place where I found my strength. The carnival might be gone, but my journey continues. And it's a journey I'm ready to embrace, with a heart that's healed, a mind that's strong, and a spirit that's soaring. The carnival might be a distant memory, but its lessons will stay with me forever.